Actually, you know what? We're live. We're alive. Everyone, thank you so much for joining today's conversation. I'm so excited. We have a wonderful special guest. And today's topic, of course, is preventing burnout. I'm sure, as you saw on the different thumbnails. Before we get started, I always like to say I appreciate you for joining as we have conversations about more expansive and more fulfilling ways of living. I'm your host, Andre Davis of the Akashic Living Podcast, and our special guest today, I say it every time and I mean it every time, is Dr. Sheila Patel. Let me just give you a little bit of background about Dr. Patel. She is actually the Chief Medical Officer for Chopra Global. She's a board certified physician who's passionate about bringing holistic healing practices into the Western medical system. For more than a decade, she practiced full spectrum family medicine, from prenatal care to ER coverage. In addition, as an integrative medical provider, she currently offers medical consultations that combine the best in conventional medicine with the wisdom of Ayurveda. She's also a yoga and Ayurveda and meditation instructor. She was one of my instructors throughout my meditation teacher training. So I'm grateful to have her here to have conversations about such an important and salient topic. So Dr. Patel, thank you for joining us today. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you here. You know, a few weeks ago, I was reading an article. It's a survey from the National Alliance of Mental Illness, right? And they conducted a survey of over 2,000 employees, including executives, about mental health. And what they found in this survey was quite striking to me. They found that 74% of the employees who participated in the survey felt they were comfortable with talking about mental health issues at work. But what really jumped off the page was that 50% of the participants, or more than 50%, said they felt burned out. And 27% felt that they were about to quit their jobs because how it was impacting their mental health. Mm-hmm. And those numbers are startling when you consider that. However, when you juxtapose that with what we've come to understand about healthcare workers and some of the challenges they're facing with burnout, I started thinking, I said, okay, so the people who are looking to be healed are feeling burned out, and the healers themselves are facing burnout. So this conversation has reached a level of concern overall. And I wanted to have you on the show just to share your expertise and your experience with burnout and just to share and help us understand how we can, one, live a life of total health and well-being, and two, even prevent getting to that state of burnout. So I thank you for being here. And I guess the conversation should start is, what is it? What is burnout and what are the symptoms of it?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what are we talking about? I think most people would, like, at some level, when you say, have you ever felt burnout or do you feel burnout, would know to say yes or no. Mm-hmm. But it's good to define it. So, there's different ways to define it. But, the 10,000 foot sort of definition is really when stress or activity becomes overwhelming. So whenever activity or the stress, could be of daily life or it could be of work, is overwhelming your ability to cope with it, then that's burnout. And it can show up with physical symptoms and emotional symptoms. It's interesting, we use common vernacular, right? Like the light bulb burned out, or the fire burned out. And that's what happens with us. Our fire burns out. We don't have the energy to really digest our life experiences anymore, to take what's coming in and really handle it, and there's many reasons for burnout, and there's different types of burnout. So again, what you were speaking to, which is now finally recognized as a condition. It's not a disease or a diagnosis per se, but a couple of years ago, even in the medical environment, as a physician, we use codes to code for, in our charting and for different diagnoses, there are different codes. And there's numbers and letters assigned to different things. So burnout actually got a code to be used as a syndrome. So it's not, again, a disease or anything, but a syndrome that can definitely be a causative factor in many illnesses.
Correct.
And so the fact that it's so prevalent, it needed its own code. And I believe this year, the World Health Organization even came up with a code for burnout, specifically work burnout, because it's so prevalent. And so work burnout is one thing. And again, that usually means that the workplace stress, so I mentioned the stress, it can be physical demands, it can be emotional demands, but the workplace stress, that's chronic. So it's usually chronic workplace stress, right? It takes time to develop burnout that hasn't been successfully managed is really how they define it. But the American Medical Association and many people are saying it's not the fault necessarily. There's two things, right? There's a person who's experiencing burnout, and there's the environment that's happening in. So the actually AMA is saying that the best response to burnout, so this is specific for physicians, is to focus fixing the workplace rather than fixing the worker, because I think so many people feel like there's something wrong with them, or it's really easy for an organization to say, why can't you handle this? It's you, it's the worker. But really the solution and a lot, there are things we can do, which we'll get to and we'll talk about as individuals to manage stress, because sometimes some of those stressors we are creating in our own minds, as you know, when we talk about our thoughts. But a lot of it, I would say the majority of it is the workplace environment, the demands on us, the expectations, the timelines, now the electronics constantly being available, all of those things really play an impact. So some of those are the things we need to focus on fixing as well, because burnout doesn't happen in a vacuum, it happens in an environment. And so, again, we basically lose the ability to manage, what's happening either in the workplace or in our day-to-day lives, because burnout can be caregiver burnout. We were talking just earlier. My dad lives with me. He's 88 and he's beginning to need more help with many, many things. So I'm experiencing that kind of number one burnout and stress that people can experience, which is caregiver burnout. And just the burnout that I've experienced in the workplace as a physician, but also many years ago before I had tools of being a busy mom, trying to manage relationship, kids, running around a very busy job in medicine. And so again, all of those demands and the stressors of life really overwhelmed my ability to manage it. And I'll add this too, as a primary care physician, I see patients physically in an office once a week. And now a lot of my work is online and teaching and different things. But I do see patients still in a regular primary care office. And the number one reason that I give people medical leave, or I'm filling out paperwork for medical leave, is burnout. So it can be, we can use other diagnoses. Like it typically shows up, as you talked about, what are the symptoms? It can be physical. So for fatigue, lack of energy, headaches, stomach problem, the whole GI system that feels all that stress, so digestive or, stomach problems, pain that flares, because when we're stressed, we feel more pain. So it can be those physical phenomenon, hard to focus, hard to concentrate, but also emotional, anxiety, irritability, anger, depression. So burnout and of any type is a sort of a precursor to other more significant, what we would call mental health illnesses or diagnoses, anxiety, depression, etc. And just a general sense of lack of purpose, lack of meaning in your job. So a lot of people, they, have these jobs that they loved, that they thought that's what they wanted to do. But because of burnout, you feel disconnected. You don't feel connected to your coworkers, to your job. So that lack of purpose and lack of meaning of waking up and going and doing something every day is gone. And that plays into also not just emotional, but spiritual well-being. Why am I here? So, so those are some of the ways it can show up. And I take people off work very often because of that.
That's interesting, because the burnout could be work related, right? But I'm sure it bleeds over into your personal life, right? Where those symptoms don't dissipate when you get home from work or when you close a computer, right? Especially if you're working remote, that those symptoms are still going to pronounce themselves throughout the course of your day, whether your interactions with your family or your friends. So it's interesting how we kind of, I guess, maybe partition, the
Right.
burnout. To be like, oh, it only happens at work, but in all actuality, I'm sure it bleeds over into each structure of our life. So that's quite
Absolutely.
interesting. That's
Yeah,
very
and it's very individualized as
Mhm.
everything. No two people's diabetes is the same, and no two people's health condition is the same. We treat it like they are, but they're really not.
Mhm.
And so no two people's burnout will be the same. I do see people who it's very their coping mechanisms, and they have healthy relationships like partnerships, spouses,
Mhm.
and children are happy, healthy, doing well, where that actually gives them a source of upliftment
Yes,
or joy, because I always ask people, like, are you feeling joy in these parts of your
correct.
life? And that's very specific to workplace stress.
Mm,
However, that's probably the minority of people that I actually talk to, because most of the time, because it's chronic stress and you're not sleeping and your emotions are dysregulated, it, like you said, it bleeds into other parts of your life. So then even your relationship is affected. So that doesn't feel joyful anymore.
mm,
Other people around you are feeling the stress at home, even if it has to do with workplace, and vice versa. If you're a caretaker and you're having burnout and you're trying to show up at work with
mhm.
as your best self, that that type of burnout from caregiving or going through a very significant life stressor
Mhm.
can also, that lack of ability to focus and all those things can go into other areas of life like work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. And you kind of hit on it from a caretaker's perspective, from a clinician's perspective. I mean, if someone is practicing full time and they have a family, how can they what can they do? From that perspective to
Yeah.
address work burnout when you have such a demand on your skill and from your career perspective.
Yeah, again, I think this is such a huge conversation in medicine, because physician burnout and other health practitioner burnout,
Mhm.
people in the healthcare arena, it's at an all-time high. And I think there's several reasons for that. And again, some of them have to do with the demands at work. Some of them have to do with the system that we're working within. That's not necessarily as we know, or as people may or may not know, I had been working in the conventional medical model even more so than I am now. I was working full time. I was working in smaller communities where the environment is actually better than it is sometimes in big medical systems. We had a little more autonomy with the
Mhm.
practice, but it was still very demanding. I was staying up, I was doing call, covering the ER, delivering all my own patients when they came in, and I loved it.
Mhm.
And I was able to do that for a little bit over a decade because we felt supported at work. I had chosen to work a little bit less clinic hours so that I had time to decompress from the
Yeah.
late nights up and stuff. But it did catch up to me eventually. And, so there, and then in my career over the last, I have my 30-year medical school reunion this summer, or this fall. So over the last 25, 30 years that I've been practicing, I've seen medicine change a lot. There's much less supportive physicians. We're hearing stories of physician groups even now going on strike. We never would have heard that. There's just a general lack of feeling supported.
Mhm.
The pace is busier than ever, and again, there are many reasons for that. That might be another segment. But physicians are asked to see more patients every day than they used to be, and because of some of the boxes we have to tick to show that we're good doctors,
Mhm.
physicians aren't actually connecting with patients anymore. When I worked in the smaller community for a community health system,
Mhm.
I got time with my patients. I knew them. We chit chatted. My dad even used to say his doctor was his friend, and he would go in and they would talk, and he would just feel better coming home, even if he didn't change his meds or do anything per se,
Mhm.
except talk to him. So listening, there's lots of studies now where physicians are, we're learning the importance of connecting to patients and empathy. But in our current system, it's almost impossible. Like, I take my dad to his doctors, and when you go to the doctor, many people experience this. You kind of feel like they're just in their own world on the computer, checking off boxes. They're not really connecting. They know nothing about you. So, and again, that's not the physician's fault. They're under these very, very tight demands. And
Mhm.
I think that is one of the things that's taken the joy. If you get joy from what you do, it doesn't feel like work, right?
Yes,
And as
exactly.
physicians, you go in wanting to help people, wanting to connect to people. Like for the most part, it's a people job. So you go into it, wanting to connect to people. And then you find, if I want to keep this job and do this job as a good doctor, I can't spend time talking to people. And so that's part of the burnout, I feel, is taking the joy out of the practice for a physician. And not just that, but the long hours. Honestly, I mean, I think the data is supporting this, that, the electronic health records are actually creating more work for physicians. Every doctor I talk to is like, it made some things easier, but overall, it takes more time to actually finish a chart now than it ever has. And so doctors are spending more time on administrative things. So again, there's many reasons for it, but I've experienced all of those, things with burnout. And so as a physician, I stepped out of that conventional medical model and started doing things more in an integrative sense, and came to Ayurveda, which is a traditional healing system that, comes from India, but am using those principles in my practice. And it's actually really helped me to take care of myself, first of all, and realize you need to take care of yourself first. And, as you said earlier, if the healers are burned out, you really aren't as effective helping other people.
Right.
So you have to take care of yourself, and then reconnecting to the patient and actually treating them like, an individual, not just a diagnosis. And so a lot of things that helped me. And so a lot of physicians choose to step out of the conventional realm and find other ways of practicing, but that's not reality for a lot of physicians. So there are some things you can do to manage. I started learning to take breaks between each patient. I was starting to learn some practices because I didn't always have all the practices I have now, but just taking 3 deep breaths. And I still do this between each patient. You just take 3 deep breaths, you become present and centered. You let go of the previous interaction with the patient, and don't think about the other, 20 people that you still have to see today. So you get centered, then you walk in the room and you're like, this is the only thing that's happening right now. And so you need to do something, and there's brain changes that happen, right? When you just take 3 deep breaths, you become present. The stress part of your brain kind of cools down or becomes less active.
Okay.
Now you're activating the emotional regulation and cognitive ability. So you're actually even going to think better when you're trying to, help someone with an issue, and you can be present with them. So presence is like, I'm here with you and I'm listening, and that just shifts not only things for the patient, but also as the physician, it completely shifts the interaction. So busy docs, they're like, oh yeah, I can't just leave my job, or, I can't ask them, can I see less patients? That doesn't work. But at the very least, take 3 deep breaths between each patient and be present in that interaction. You'll feel better. The patient will feel better. And then outside of work, these things are very challenging, but trying to, all the things we talk about, healthy lifestyle, go to sleep at the right time when you have a chance, to do that, go to bed early. Some sort of physical movement, is always helpful for managing stress. Surrounding yourself with free time with things that uplift you and people that uplift you, that it's okay to say no to things that are going to drain even more of your energy, so just kind of basic self-care is good. And then I think we have to come together to try to, make some changes within the system as well to make it more supportive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. So it sounds like you change your internal environment to help you respond differently to the external environment. I mean, if I could boil down that a little bit, but allowing you to
Absolutely.
having more balance internally and a different way of showing up to have more presence. I think that presence that, as you alluded to with physicians, fuels the purpose, right? Because if you're not present and you're just clicking the boxes in the electronic health record, you feel like you lose a sense of purpose in what you're doing, right? It becomes very transactional. As opposed to, to your point with your father, or, when, the primary care doc's name and it's a relationship, right? That's more transformational. That's more long-term, as opposed to something that's just a little bit of brief cross section, if you will, just a check-in. So I think that helps both, right? That helps the healer and the person that's looking to, to have a treatment or to be healed. So
yeah, I'll tell you, I can see like the same number of people in a day potentially that I used to, but come out at the end of the day not feeling as exhausted because I'm kind of restoring myself. And again, when you calm your system with a couple of deep breaths, or even like a regular meditation practice, when you do a short breathing practice or meditation at the end of your day, whatever you consider the end of your work day, it shifts the nervous system into the, parasympathetic or rest and digest. And so then we actually create energy when we're in fight or flight or sympathetic, overwhelm and overload. The sympathetic nervous system is overactivated, which is what happens throughout the day with activity. That actually takes energy. And also, the stress part of our brain is activated because that's how physiology works. If we perceive we're in fight or flight, I don't have enough time, I don't like this, whatever it is, we're going to be in that stress part of the brain and not necessarily using our most of our cerebral cortex. And so just taking those 3 deep breaths, doing a short meditation at the end of the day, we switch the brain chemistry, and we also switch the sympathetic over arousal off and turn on the parasympathetic. And then you're going to feel better, because of that balance.
So that's so important. We started off before we started going live and I was saying how important feeling good about myself is every day. That's kind of been my mantra to take care and be very intentional about feeling good about myself. And that requires a lot of different practices at any different part of the day, right? Whether it's, journaling before I go to bed, something that I'm grateful for, or waking up in the morning and just expressing my gratitude and having a meditation or taking a walk. It seems like there's a variety of ways or things to do to just make sure that you feel good about yourself. So you're not burning energy in fear or flight or fight type of, responses. Can you share, I guess, morning practices, right? Particularly, Monday morning. And one thing I remember is, most people have their heart attacks on Monday, right? So if you're moving into a Monday morning, and I know we're not on a Monday, but if you're moving into a Monday morning and you have this general sense of fear or loathing or dread about it, what are some of the practices that you can use to just get you out of that state?
Yeah, so you mentioned journaling. I'm a big believer in journaling. I never used to be. I was one of the skeptics. Hey, I trained in the Western medical environment where we thought all of this was just woo-woo or fluff, So once I started learning how all of these practices shift your physiology, for me as a physician, it started to make more sense to me. And then the more important thing, when I started practicing these and experiencing it for myself. And that's what I always tell physicians. I'm like, you don't have to believe any of this because there's lots of science. You don't have to believe any of it, but just try it and see how it affects, see what you experience. And most physicians, when they try something and it helps them, they start recommending it in the office to their patients, whether there's some randomized controlled trial or not. I know this. And so we can't fool ourselves to say, is there a randomized controlled trial about this? And luckily nowadays there are many, many studies that show the benefits of meditation, yoga, breathing practices, but journaling also. And so I usually tell people to journal before bed because, journaling first thing in the morning is great, but oftentimes people feel like I don't have time because that's one of the things that right away when you wake up, your mind is racing. So the best thing to do is right before you go to bed, just have a little journal. And like you said, just write down 5 things you're grateful for or 10 things you're grateful for. And most of us can come up with those 5 or 10 things. And it can be the same thing every night. You don't have to get creative, just write down. So simple. There's another little practice that I started doing myself that really helped me sleep, because a lot of times when we're all jazzed up from the day, we have trouble sleeping, right? So I would just take maximum of 2 minutes and just write down everything that was, buzzing around in my mind, that chatter. And I would just write it down like stream of consciousness. So that just takes like 2 minutes. And again, there's brain science that shows that cools down the amygdala, and now we can actually feel more centered. So it's not a practice to like work out all the problems of the day. No, it's just dumping, so you just dump out your day, and then you silently, intentionally say to yourself, like, I'm letting all that go. And then I would write down the numbers 1, 2, 3, and I would write down 3 intentions that I had, for like my life, or affirmations, so what I tell people is when you dump, you're like picking out the weeds. Then just 3 intentions. And this isn't meant to be a thinking practice. This is more of, honestly, like a spiritual practice. You plant, what seeds do you want to plant? You get to plant 3 new seeds every night, so you don't have to do them all at the same time. So I intend to be more physically active. I intend to, accept more help from people, or whatever it is, or an affirmation, like I love what I do, or, something. So, but just 3 things. These are the seeds that you want to plant. Then I would close it with 3 things I'm grateful for. And that's kind of like the fertilizer or the water on top of the seeds. So that whole practice took me maybe 3-4 minutes max. So when people say I don't have time, I'm like, do you have 3 or 4 minutes? Most people do. And then I would close the book, not think about it, the notebook. I just had a little notebook by my bed. And then I found I slept so much better. And typically you're going to wake up without all that energy, racing first thing in the morning, So how you wake up has a lot to do with how you go to bed.
Absolutely.
So this is a great practice to do, just something quick before bed. And then some breathing. So then I would lay on my back, and this is what I tell people to do, and just focus on my breath. Focus on your belly rising, focus on the belly falling. Your mind might go off into a thought. Your attention will wander. Just bring it back to your abdomen, or, your breath. And then slowly you'll drift off to sleep. Sometimes it takes a while, but studies show when you have new practices, within 2 to 3 months, you do shift your nervous system and your physiology, your biology. So just stick with it. Then when you wake up, there's different things you can do. The first thing I do is go to my breath. Okay. Because when you can, we say control your breath, but I say when you manage your breath, you're managing your mind. In the yoga tradition, the mind follows the breath. So if you wake up and you notice you're like chest breathing and it's a little fast, that's what your mind is going to be doing. So I trained myself. This took some time to wake up. As soon as I woke up and, kind of became aware I was awake, I would immediately go to my breath, and I would do 5 minutes of just slow belly breathing.
Okay.
And that again slows down the mind. Now I'm ready to get up. You can, again, it's different for everyone, but you could do a meditation first thing in the morning to get centered for your day, or sit up and do a few more minutes of deep breathing. And then, you can start your day. You can even start the day by writing down 3 things you're grateful for, and then, move on. So some kind of practice in the morning. I love teaching breathing because it's so easy. Yeah. It's always with you. It's free. Your breath is free.
That's right.
And of course, we're big fans of meditation. And I also recognize with lots of patients I see in my office, it's a process to get them to meditate sometimes. And eventually, we work on it, but they can always do a few minutes of slow rhythmic breathing. So I just say count to 5 on the inhale, count to 5 on the exhale, count to 5, inhale, count to 5. Completely can transform your day. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's fantastic information. I love the fact, you talked about breathing, because that's something for everyone. That's for even kids. Like kids, they won't understand meditation, some of them, right? Yeah. But they understand a breathing exercise, and you can make it fun. You can make it really fun for them. So breathing, I think, is universal in terms of just coming to a space of you're no longer in fight or flight, but you're more balanced and centered. So thank you.
And I think even like burnout is a thing. Like I have kids that are 28. I call them kids still, 28 and 26, and they're in the working world now and everything. But I taught them breathing, in middle school. And my daughter, who tends toward anxiety, she said, "Mom, I don't think I would have made it through college without my breathing breathing practices." And she was off and on them, but whenever she started feeling ramped up, she would get on them. And, again, talk about burnout, even in college and school, all these kids with anxiety, depression, it starts with this overwhelm.
Yes.
And then can result in burnout and then eventually mental health issues. And again, it's more complicated than that sometimes, but it can really, really help.
Teaching people how to feel good, to get into a state of feeling good about themselves. I mean, that's critical. And I think the earlier you're able to learn these practices, the better they'll serve you later on in life. So you don't get to the state of burnout. You can kind of, just understand, hey, let me come back to my breath, and no longer worried about the concerns of the future and the past. I'm in the state of now. So that's a beautiful.
Absolutely. And actually, when we practice present moment awareness, and like this is mindfulness, being mindful awareness, being in the
Yes.
present moment, so many things happen in our physiology, like the nervous system comes down, but also, again, as I mentioned, how the brain, the prefrontal cortex, like the more evolved part of our brain, starts to be more, the neural connections are working more in sync. And there are actually parts of the brain there that have to do with creativity and cognitive ability, our ability to problem solve. So when that's all more active and, and we're using those parts of our brain, we actually can come up with creative solutions to whatever's going on in life that we couldn't come up with when the stress part of the brain is more active. So, with again, burnout, and for physicians or anyone else, when you do these practices, whether it's meditation, breathing, just being aware of what's happening, being aware of what's happening in your body, these mindfulness practices, you start to just completely shift how you think about things. So sometimes the things, I'm not, and again, this isn't to say it's there isn't stressors around you, because obviously that there are, but sometimes it shifts your perception of what's happening. And stress, there's the sort of external stress, that's, the demands and the timelines and all the, so many things to do in a day thing that's external. But internally, as you mentioned, sometimes something's happening in our life and we struggle against it. And that's what's actually creating our stress, right? Our own thoughts. And so when we're more mindful and we're more present, instead of being in the thoughts like, oh, I'd rather be somewhere else, or I can't, whatever thoughts we're having that's kind of making it harder in this present moment, we start to be able to shift our thoughts a little bit. We start to recognize, well, that's a thought. I'm going to shift my thought. I'm going to be present. And that's, again, another way to manage internally how we're dealing with all the stresses.
And these are skills, these are practices that we can develop, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I feel like they get kind of, that woo-woo treatment where it's something where either you're born with it or you're not, you have it or you don't. But in all actuality, there's just things that we can practice and develop to help us show up differently on a day-to-day basis. And they really do help us feel good about ourselves. And they really enrich every single aspect of our lives when we continue to employ them.
That's such an important message that you bring up there, that we this isn't like, oh yeah, some people are just like that. I mean, I look at myself now, and the person, 25, 30 years ago that was starting out in medicine, I would be like, no way. That's not me. And some of the things I talk about, and I was introduced to meditation as a young child. Because my parents are from India, and my mom meditated, and so we were introduced to a very simple, way of starting meditation. But what happened is when I got to college, med school, residency, those times when I really needed it, I didn't do it anymore, because I didn't really understand, how useful that was and how transformative these practices are. And it was only later that I came back to it, and I started doing yoga more regularly. And then all the science on breath work, I was fascinated. And so then that's become an absolute necessity on a daily basis for me, is breathing, and just simple breathing techniques. And so, I get it. It's not, it's absolutely something you can learn. And again, the thing is, that is our natural state, right? Our natural state is to be balanced and healthy and happy. It's all the other external things, sometimes starting from childhood, especially if we've had traumas, that get in the way of that. So it's actually not even teaching you anything. It's teaching you the practices.
Correct.
But it's more reminding you of what actually is and who you really are, right? On the inside, if you took away all of these things. And so you're just really reconnecting to that. So it's actually more natural than all of the things that we think are natural, right?
Can you restate that one more time? Because I think what happens is we identify with the conditions, with the stressors, right? And that becomes our identity in many respects, right? But can you just say that again, that is what our natural state really is? Because I think that reframes our understanding of how we should show up. I mean, just off of who we are. Can you say that again?
Absolutely. If I remember what I said.
You said our natural state being in balance.
Exactly. Yeah. And actually, and this is a teaching in Ayurveda, which is what I love about this healing system. It teaches us that health, meaning, And what that means is, it doesn't mean, oh, I have nothing going on. Like, it can be health, meaning I have no illnesses or whatever. But what health means is that our physiology is constantly moving in the direction of healing ourselves, right? These are all the self-regulatory mechanisms that we have inside of us. And that's our natural state. We're trying to heal all the time, right? Think about all the little things that happen in a day, and we don't fall apart because our body is self-healing. It's a self-healing system. And so health is our natural state. Like, that's the direction we're constantly moving in. And happiness in the mind. Like, if you think about a baby or a young child, if their needs are met, like their basic physical needs and their basic emotional needs, attention, affection, as we talk about appreciation, affection, if their basic physical and emotional needs are met, you're happy. That's all there is, right? You're just happy. So happiness in the mind, feeling joyful, and feeling, healthy in the body, that is our natural state. Health and happiness is our natural state. So then the next question is, well, then why don't I feel healthy and happy all the time? Because things get in the way and we forget, right? We start, just as you said, we start to identify with the external conditions, our and then the things that we're conditioned to think make us happy, our position, the school we went to, our titles, our relationship, if you're not married or you are, or all the things that the external world tells us we need to be happy. We start to identify more with that, and we forget that we're really health and happiness. That's really who we are. And that's, again, the interesting thing from kind of this, like a more consciousness-based or spiritual approach, is when you do these practices and many other practices out there, you start to reconnect with who you really are. Your physiology starts to move more in the direction of self-healing and health. Your mind starts to focus more on joyful thoughts and self-affirming thoughts than the negative thoughts. So we're just shifting us back toward really our natural state, of who we really are. Yeah.
Shifting us back to our natural state of who we really are. That's a lot. That's beautiful. That's beautiful, because it's a huge shift from the current social constructs, right? Because there's
absolutely
there are constructs, there are things that we are believed that we believe we are supposed to have, or that we need in order to be happy and healthy and successful. And I think what happens in a lot of times, and that may in some cases attribute to burnout, is that in the pursuit of those things that we think will make us happy and healthy, we come up to the awareness that no, that's not it. That's not it. And so now we're kind of left without a practice to understand, okay, so how do I get to that place of understanding? Oh, I just need to remember, right? Remember that is my natural state. And so what does that undoing process look like for someone who's in a state of burnout? What does, to the person that's in the cubicle right now or working at home and they're burned out? Yeah. What does that look like?
So, again, I see so many people in the office that I attribute a lot of their issues that they're having. Like, we think, oh yeah, you have anxiety. Well, you weren't wired that way. I mean, some people, there's a spectrum, right? But most people that I see, it's the outcome. It's the symptom of typically things that are going on at work, right? It's the overwhelm, the burnout. And then in the typical realm, people will say, here, take an antidepressant, take an anti-anxiety medicine. Temporarily, that can help. I'm not anti-medication. I prescribe things, but that's not the solution to the problem, right? And so many people, again, they can't just quit their jobs. They have financial responsibilities, families, but there are little things. I teach everyone some breathing. Once you shift the brain chemistry, then I start to introduce to them, maybe a little bit of journaling, like write down 3 things that you'd like to see in your life or something like that, right? Simple things. When the physiology starts to shift, then you can start to have the conversation. Is this really the job I want? Is there something else out there for me? When I do put people on leave, and so again, and a lot of people don't realize you can ask your physicians for leave for burnout. And again, sometimes we code it as anxiety or depression or however it's showing up, because that's actually the medical code, the medical diagnosis, but we can relate it to burnout, especially workplace burnout. And you can take leave, and so many people that it's their own mind that says, oh gosh, I can't take leave. What are people going to say? Correct. What are they going to think? But if you can just, think of that as just like taking a medication, helping yourself to heal.
Correct.
You can ask for that. There's family medical leave and, workplaces. So your physician can fill out paperwork to help give you time off. I usually take like 2 or 3 months. I just tell people, look, this isn't a 2-week off thing and then you go back. I just need some rest. I just need to get some sleep. No, I say you have to commit to taking 2 to 3 months off. Usually we can give up to 3 months and you can always go back sooner. But I say, take this time. And during that time, this is what we're going to do. We're going to spend your time. I usually have people see counselor, get in with a therapist or counselor just to kind of talk things out, figure out, life and help with reorienting some of the thoughts that you might be having. So counseling, but also start taking walks a couple of times a week, right? And then eventually every day, if they can, start to do some journaling. I lead people toward breathing practices and even breathing apps. Nowadays, there are great apps out there, for like just meditation and breathing. And I always tell people, reconnect to the things that bring you joy, that used to bring you joy, that more than likely you've forgotten. Pick up your guitar again that's been there sitting there for 15 years, or, play with, do some art, or, anything that brought you joy. And I can't necessarily prescribe that, but I ask the questions. What used to bring you joy? Reconnect to a community. Sometimes it's a spiritual community, a church, groups, spiritual groups, or even just social groups. So I think we've gotten so separated, and isolation is so not good for us. I mean, sometimes we need alone time, but we need to also feel connected. So, there's different whatever types of groups, that you can join and just kind of reconnect to people, nature, and your inner joy. That's what you do with that time. And then other practices, and then we just see what happens, right? And I'll tell you, 100% of the people that I do that with, they feel better by the end of that time, and they usually have a new outlook on life. Some people, and I would say actually, honestly, most people, and this might be kind of scary for some of you, but most of those people will decide, this isn't really what I want to be doing. And it also gives you space to sort of just even look at what's out there. What else could I be doing? What else would be more aligned with my purpose of why I think I'm here? And if it is that job, you can also come up with creative solutions, ways you want to go back into that workplace. I know people that have been willing. I just saw someone. I know people who are willing to take a different position, maybe a lower position, like what we call lower.
A lower, right?
And they'll say, you know what? I'm so much happier now with this new job. I don't need to be the, VP of whatever. So again, in the beginning, it might sound kind of crazy because we're conditioned to think everything I've done is so I can have that job, right? And I even experienced this when I shifted out of what I was doing, and I was like, oh, now I'm working at the Chopra Center for Wellbeing. And a lot of my friends that knew me from med school and residency, they're like, what are you doing? And so I had to get over that conditioning and that fear of like, am I still a doctor? And I thought, you know what? I'm still healing people. I'm still helping people to heal. They'll heal themselves, actually. And I still see patients, 1 day a week in a regular medical office because I do like to stay connected to primary care. But that doesn't make me any less of a doctor and even if it does, why did I even go into medicine in the first place? To help people, right? And so I think sometimes physicians need to also be a little bit not so fearful. Granted, we put a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort into, and a lot of people come out with debt. And so you're sort of confined to this system that's going to help you, either pay back loans or do whatever. And, but, I think physicians also, there are options out there that sometimes we're afraid to take, So, so if you're sitting there and you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I just can't, I don't think I can manage another day. I feel nauseous when I wake up. I'm sick. I have headaches. I'm not sleeping. I'm fatigued. I can't even focus on my job and I hate it. You are definitely experiencing burnout. So consider talking to your doctor and just taking some time off and, again, just really reconnecting to what it is that you really want to be doing. And, are there other ways you can use your natural gifts and abilities to help others and also yourself, right? Because burnout's not sustainable. Like everything like that is taking more energy than you're receiving. That light bulb can only burn for so long. That fire can only burn so much. If you ask it to burn more, it can't do it, and so we're like that. And actually, when I was working at the physical Chopra Center here in Carlsbad, we would see a lot of people in the corporate world and physicians and really high stress jobs that would come because they were on a little break, and they would come to reset and recalibrate and heal. And many of them had ended up in the hospital because they were pushing themselves, and then their body just breaks down. And so again, ideally you want to try to get take some time off before you get to those conditions.
Yeah. Wow. That's great information. So I don't know if a lot of people, I didn't know about the opportunity, to go to a physician and talk about burnout. To me, burnout was just something that was just personal, and you just had to deal with it the best you could. I didn't know there was a medical diagnosis, if you will, about burnout, and that you could seek advice from a licensed medical practitioner. That was something that was not in my radar. So thank you for that. And I'm sure someone who could be experiencing it right now can benefit from that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love how you tapped into the joy component of it, right? Finding what brings you joy to restore that vibrance, that vigor in your life. And for me, it's playing, right? And I think a lot of people we forget, as we get older, we forget the importance of play. I have 2 little kids, and with my son in particular, I get a chance to have a program at school called Watchdog Dads. And so this is where you get to go to school with your kid, and you can observe them in the class. It's amazing. You observe them in the class, but then you also go to other classrooms and you help the teachers out. And I distinctly remember last year I went to be a watchdog dad, and it was kind of during fall. And I'm outside with the kindergartens watching them during recess. And all of a sudden, all of these leaves started falling off of the trees. And the kids were like they were screaming and going crazy because they saw all these leaves falling off the tree. And it was like, they couldn't quite understand it. They didn't know what to call it. They were like, it's leafing. And to me, the amount of joy that I saw on their face and just the enthusiasm, I said, wait, we still have that as adults. We forget it. We forget that it's important for us to have these experiences. And so I'm watching the kids just try to grab just one leaf that fell off of the tree. And I said, we lose that. We lose that when we don't allow ourselves to play, allow ourselves to be in awe of life by going on autopilot at times, just trying to take care of the responsibilities or fulfill our roles and positions. So can you speak about the importance of just people playing and not taking life so serious all the time? Like, we got to play a little bit, don't we, Doc?
Oh my gosh, play is so important. It's so important. I'm a big fan of play. Yes. And again, it's all about that balance, like a lot of lives is about, buckling down and doing what you have to do. So the rest of the time you should just be playing, keeping the balance of things that bring you joy. And again, it's different for everyone, but there are some generalizations, like getting out. Like I always tell people, what did you enjoy doing as a kid? Because that's probably closer to your true self than, because sometimes people are like, I don't know what brings me joy because they've been so disconnected. What did you like doing when you were a kid? Or, or just go out and walk in nature, and then it'll start coming back to you, right? We played outside all the time when we were kids. And one of my favorite things to do was just lay on the grass and just watch the clouds go by. Oh, yeah. And then you find out, that's actually a mindfulness practice, like you just watch the clouds, they change, you just, watch them passing by, and then you learn to let your thoughts just pass by, right? We played games outside, running tag and all those, sorts of games. Some people liked sports, and so they need to get out and move more. I loved books. And for a long time in my life, I never read a book. And I was like, oh my gosh, I used to read so many books. And so sometimes with that, with your downtime, you can, go and find a good book, that you want to read. So yeah, just finding the joy. And joy is expansive. When we connect to things that bring us joy, we're actually shifting our physiology, as we talked about. Like there are practices we can do to do that, but just connecting to people that, again, uplift you and make you feel joyful. You feel better after you talk to them than you did before you talked to them. So what brings you joy? That's a question that I ask a lot of people. And if you can't remember or you don't know, then try to remember to what did you used to like to do as a kid, because kids will naturally move to the things that they enjoy, right? That bring them joy. And so for what's right for me, and Ayurveda teaches us this too, there's no one size fits all. So what brings one person joy may not be what brings me joy. So, those are the things that I have people think about and then start to bring more into their life. Not just only the activities, joyful things, joyful people, joyful stimulation, joyful, community. So I love that message. I think you have a good message. Play, joy. We were talking about the weekend. I had some people over and we played this great board game. It took a couple hours and it was like, oh, that was so much fun. And, think about all the games you used to play as a kid. And just, you don't have to take all the other stuff so seriously. It is, important, but so is play. Taking care of it. Yeah.
Makes you come alive. It makes you come alive. That's our natural state.
Yes.
The natural state. As children, my kids, I learned so much from them where I just watch and observe. And I'm like, oh, you know what? I used to do that. I have to go back to doing some of those things. And that's powerful. There were a couple of themes that ran throughout the course of this conversation. We talked about joy. We talked about gratitude. We talked about breathing. And there was one more that I wanted to tap into just a little further, if you will. Sure. Intentions. You said the seeds, that we place seeds. And so can you speak about intentions and their importance and what they are?
Yeah, so intention is kind of like something that you want. It's sort of like a desire, but it's deeper than that. It's sort of what you want at the deepest level, an intention. Desire can be like, oh, I want that pair of shoes, or I want that, and there's attachment to that, sometimes to desire. Intention is something that you want at, your deepest self, that feels like it's your, related to your soul. It's things that your heart wants, right? So, and it's usually, it can be something specific, but usually it's something more general, like love, or, I want to feel purposeful, or, again, intention setting is sometimes people think of as setting goals. That's different. Goals come from the mind. And it's okay to have goals, but intentions are more like what your soul wants. And again, sometimes people are like, what does that mean? But it's like, again, what your heart really wants. What do I really want? That's an intention. It comes from the deepest, our spirit. And when we connect, and so it's important, this is called self-inquiry also in one of the Eastern philosophies, Vedanta. They actually do meditations just based on self-inquiry. Asking yourself the right questions, right? And so who am I? And then what do I want? But what do I really want? What does, not just from my ego self, my mind telling me I want that job, I want that, car, whatever. But what do I really want? And sometimes you just start by asking the question and you let it go. You don't even have to have an answer, because usually we're going to try to find an answer from our mind, which is loud. I always tell people the spirit or the soul whispers to us. So that's why we have to be quiet, right? And so you just ask the question. And as you know, when we meditate, we ask these soul questions. Who am I? What do I want? What is my purpose? And what am I grateful for? And we just, the practice is ask the question and let it go. It's not a thinking thing. And then in our day-to-day lives, the answer will start to come. Oh, that's what I really want. That's what I really want. And sometimes even the external things you want, you can use that to say, okay, but why do I want that? Why do I want that car? Oh, for prestige. Why do I want prestige? So that people accept me. Oh, okay. So now we're getting down to like what I really want. So if you be like a 3-year-old, say, well, why, daddy? Why about, why do I want that thing? And eventually that'll lead you toward what you really want. So intentions are important, because when we understand our intentions, that's what will guide our behavior, right? So then even subconsciously in our day-to-day lives, we tend to move toward things and make choices with a knowingness that that's leading us toward what we really want, our true intentions. And so that's why, as part of my journaling, I would, set some intentions, and then you let them go. you put a little bit of energy toward that, and then you'll start to be moving more in the direction of what you really want, your intentions. And it's really interesting writing them down, thinking about them. When we don't think about what we really want, we're just sort of like ships blowing around in the wind, wherever the wind takes us, right? So intentions kind of are a little guide of where we want to get to, but we're okay with the twists and turns to get there. If we force too hard, we may miss something that was over here on our way to that intention, right? So sometimes the spiritual journey, or the journey of spirit, is more fun, but it's not a direct line, right?
Correct.
And so so intentions are very important because they'll help guide our behavior. And it's so funny that you said that, because we were talking about intentions yesterday when we were playing this game. And it's so interesting if you just observe, even in day-to-day life. My brother, who was playing, he had, like, when we first started the game, it was a new game and we were just starting, and he was like, okay, this is the one thing I want to do with this game, is collect a certain tokens. And then I had set an intention. You get these cards, and as you collect resources and things, you get to play one of those cards. And my intention was, I want to play this card. By the end of the game, I want to have played this card. Okay. And guess what? That's what we did, right?
Wow.
So all the decisions I made with every round of the game were moving toward that intention that I had. And I was able to play the card by the end of the game. Every choice he made as we went around each, he would make the choice to get him to that intention that he had. And that's what happened. So it's really important to be clear on what your intentions are, because then your choices start to align, and sometimes even subconsciously. And as we say, the universe kinds of aligns opportunities, as long as you're open to looking for them, to get you in the direction of your intentions. So it's really very interesting how that works.
That's powerful. It become like your North Star in many respects, your guiding point.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's so powerful. You reminded me of a quote that came from Rumi. He says, raise your words, not your voice. It is the rain that grows flowers, not thunder, right? So raising our words in terms of our intention, right? There's oftentimes Michael Beckwith talks about an intention deficit disorder, right? We don't necessarily don't know what we want, right? So we're always kind of vacillating between this and that, but the words of our intention will actually allow the flowers to grow, not the thunder of our doing.
I love that. So, one of my really guidebooks to life, and maybe one of yours as well, because Deepak Chopra, has been a mentor for me, and as you as well, because you've been in our programs. So he wrote this beautiful book, and the 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. And mine's been all, the book cover is getting old. I've had it for a very long time. But he, one of the laws is the law of intention and desire. And, it's a short little book, and it's just very simple. I always tell people, sometimes I'll recommend, that people get the book, because you can just read one little chapter. It's, it's just a few pages, but it talks about how to use these spiritual principles in actual day-to-day modern life. And so he talks about that, of, the importance of intention, but also Monday's law, the law of giving and receiving. As speaking of burnout, you can give and give and give, but you also need to receive. And so is there a balance of giving and receiving in your life? And so again, all these little pearls, I love that book. Yeah.
The law of giving and receiving. That's a beautiful one. That is a beautiful one. That's a lesson I learned in terms of being willing to receive. Sometimes it's easier to give, which, if you don't make yourself available to receive, because it's all circulation of energy, right? Absolutely. That can lead to a sense of burnout as well. Right?
100%. And I think, again, so much of this is that conditioning we have as in modern society, but also, just in modern society, that giving and doing, or, like giving, meaning I'm going to do stuff for, a job or another person, is somehow you're strong. And by receiving, that somehow that's weak, and that's perceived as a negative thing.
Correct.
And that's such a wrong message, and it's like you said, it's more about energy exchange, you can't give if you're also not receiving, right? You're blocking by not receiving, or, help from someone. How many times I used to be like this too. I used to think like someone would say, "Oh, here, I'm going to give this to you, or would you want me to help you?" I say, "No, no, 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 no. I don't." And now, after I started learning, this is more about energy exchange, and you have to receive to be able to give.
Correct.
It's like filling up your tank to also be able to keep it running. I would start to say, "Oh, thank you," instead of, "No, I'm blocking this energy. Thank you. That's very sweet." Or sometimes I would say, "Yeah, that would be great. That's very kind of you." Or just, "Oh, I really appreciate it, but I don't really, need that right now." So, but yeah, just not automatically blocking. I think a lot of people are better at giving than receiving. Some people are better at receiving than giving. And so for them, sometimes like going out and like giving and like volunteering in a place, or doing something for others, like we say, when the quickest way to make, Deepak would say, the quickest way to make yourself happy is to make someone else happy.
Yes.
That's contagious, that happiness that you give to someone else. So so I love all these little simple messages that can help us in our day-to-day lives, and keep us from burning out. We actually have this is what we teach to our natural state. We have this like really incredible source of energy within us, this life energy, this life force, when we're nourishing ourselves. And that's why it includes like stepping back sometimes and like, okay, how am I eating? How am I sleeping? We have to sleep. We have to nourish ourselves with healthy food. We need to, have healthy practices that access that energy inside of us. We have to have relationships that actually, uplift us. Then we have so much energy, but we can't access it if we're overwhelmed, or if we're not doing the things in our lives that help us tap into that energy.
That's right. It's a practice. It's a practice, developing that practice of allowing that energy to flow freely, because that's our natural state.
Exactly.
To be in that creative, that constantly healing state. That is naturally who we are.
Absolutely.
Who we are. And so by the practices that you talked about today, whether it's breathing, whether it's journaling or gratitude, remembering what brings you joy, those are the different ways that we can allow that energy to flow freely in our lives and allow us to be more creative and happier beings.
Absolutely.
And happier beings. That's
being more of who we really are, and again, sometimes you just start with something simple, because once you get that remembrance going, you start to shift your brain chemistry. And again, we can we can talk the science route, we can talk the spiritual language route, doesn't matter, it's all the same. Because once you just start moving that needle, you're going to end up way over here instead of way over here, And so sometimes people think like, oh, what's that going to do if I just do 10 minutes of breathing every day? It's going to do a lot a couple of months from now, And so most people will notice a difference and feel something immediately, but stick with it, stick with the practices. And then, like I said, you start to be able to manage whatever's happening around you, more effectively. And you start to really have more creative solutions to the things that you were perceiving as problems, that maybe you're like, why didn't I ask for that? Why didn't I just ask for that 6 months ago? I see so many people, they take the time off and they think about what they really want. They go ask their boss when they come back, and they were like, not everyone, of course, but a lot of people are like, oh yeah, they said, yeah, I could have this extra time off, or yeah, I got whatever XYZ that I asked for. And they're like, I didn't think that would happen, So, and again, sometimes I would also say, don't be afraid to make those big changes if they're in the direction of why you're really here and your true purpose. And, it's right, like the rest of life, you can manage stepping away and doing something different, then you probably end up happier for it. We're so afraid sometimes, right?
It all works out. It all works out in the end. It really does. I mean, this is a beautiful conversation because I think it's so topical. There's so many people that are going through experiencing symptoms of burnout or already in that state of burnout. So I'm grateful for you sharing your wisdom and your expertise around this area, because like I said, it's so important for people to know that there's light. There's light.
Absolutely.
There's a way. There's a practice that they can employ to help them exactly where they are, right where they are. So
Absolutely.
before we go, I mean, one of the things I wanted to show was that there is an opportunity if you found interest in the information that Dr. Patel was sharing. If you find that you would like to learn more about whether it's Ayurveda or it's health coaching or it's yoga or nutrition, that you can log on to what is it? IIN. Is that the name of it? Integrativenutrition.com, excuse me. And using the promo code that's listed in the screen, Andre Davis 20, that will give you a 45% discount on all of the Chopra and the IIN program. So do know that if you have a more detailed interest or in-depth interest in learning more, that you can take advantage of this promo code for the rest of the month that is available to you. So just something I definitely wanted to throw out there for people who are interested. Before we adjourn, Dr. Patel, are there any final thoughts, any message that you would like to leave listeners regarding burnout and just the importance of well-being?
Yeah, I just think, again, we're here to enjoy our life, right? And love each other and be joyful and play. And along the way, we need to make a living, yes, and all of those things. But like, why are we really here? Are we really here for that title, that position, that material thing? So many people that I see that have experienced burnout and changed their life after, they remove themselves from that situation. They're like, I'm so much happier now. And, really all I want to do is play with my kids or cook dinner, and have time to do those things. And sometimes that involves different things than what even your parents or your teachers or society tells you. Because I think a lot about burnout is a disconnect. We're not aligned with what we really want. We're trying to get ourselves to what society told us we wanted. So it's a disconnect, right? And so, I think for burnout, there's the internal environment, as you said, and there are practices you can do to at least help you manage all the stressors that are going on. But ultimately, there's that external environment that's going to keep being there. And just know that sometimes, you need to make a change, or at least you'd need a chunk of time to reset, reboot, and ask yourself the questions of whether that's really what you want. And that's when you can reach out to your physicians. And I'm glad you mentioned that you weren't aware of that, because a lot of people aren't aware. Some people are, but I'm always surprised at how many people aren't aware that not only is it possible, but it's an extremely reasonable and thing to do. I always tell people, it's like, if you needed surgery and someone said you have to take 8 weeks off to heal, you do it, right? And so this is something that's well worth and taking your time off to help yourself heal from burnout and make the shifts you need, and and that's available to you.
That goes back to the mind-body connection, right? Or making that connection. I think sometimes if it were an arm or a leg, we'd go see the doctor immediately, right? And get a letter. But when it comes to the mind, there's a disconnect between the two, and we may not actually see all the resources that are available and at our disposal.
Right. Yeah. So hopefully people will at least start breathing, and then I'll be happy.
Start breathing. Keep breathing, folks. Keep breathing. Real quick, I'll tell you my journey into breathing started when I got COVID in 2020. I got it 2021. I got it really bad, right? And so to the point where I had to relearn how to breathe. And to me, I was like, relearning how to breathe. No one ever taught me how to breathe. That was just, relearn, right? And so from there, what I started doing was, more breathing techniques and more breathing exercises. And I realized the importance of being able to shift my energy by breathing, by being intentional at different parts of the day, checking in. How am I feeling? Am I holding my breath? Am I having short, shallow breaths? Am I breathing from up here? Just becoming more aware. But it wasn't until I had that experience that I became more aware of it. So something I definitely wanted to share, and how it's important to breathe, to learn how to breathe. But Dr. Patel, thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's been a wonderful conversation.
Yeah.
Continued blessings to you on your journey. And
to you.
Thank you very much. I look forward to the next one.
All right.
Take care now. Yep.
Bye.
Bye-bye.